All right, we're live. It is Thursday, 5 p.m. That means it's time for End Hype Live. Okay, so today I have a great one for you. So Dylan and we've spoken and I've listened to Dylan speak, and I had to bring him on. He's a little outside of our comfort zone because although he's worked in the trades, he's doing pesky software stuff instead of physical products. But his story is fantastic, and I know he's going to bring insights on a couple of different factors. But short background: Dylan is the founder of Kowabunga Studios. Their products automate the tedious tasks that you hate in electrical building design. Dylan, first, as an aside, I'm sure you get this all the time. I love your branding, man. All right, like this. So, like from a technical branding perspective, right? The surf theme layered against kind of the tedium of industrial CAD. It's just pure problem solution fit genius. And then that like splash of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, man. I mean, you gotta love it, right?
I'm talking to engineers, man.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to fully derail the conversation into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and branding, but I'm kind of a branding geek, and I just looked at that and I thought, hey, that makes me feel like really comfortable. Like this guy's gonna solve my problems because it's like it's a tight solution, but also just kind of like a laid back way of like you got this. But tell us how you got here. I mean, it's kind of a very specific niche. So like, what's the origin story of Dylan and Kowabunga?
Yeah. So thank you so much for having me on. And man, I love this brand too, right? And hype, because being an entrepreneur is there's no hype to it. And for me, so I became an electrical engineer. I grew up off the grid, so lived in Oregon in the mountains, was 10 miles from the ocean, half an hour from town. But we had, like you walk into the house, it's like anything you would see in a normal house, right? Power is all the same, appliances, all that kind of stuff. But we had a battery bank, and solar, wind, hydro, generator, like we had it all in Oregon and like on the coast. So that got me into power engineering, and that's what I went to school for. Like, knew I want to do power systems. Went through that, worked for a company doing arc flash, and was in factories all the time doing all the electrical safety stuff. Got into an architecture firm and learned kind of the other side of it, right? From fresh dirt, green grass to big building. I worked on everything from Ford manufacturing plants, schools, hospitals, offices, like you name it, I've probably designed it. And through that process, there's a lot of just repetitive stuff. So anyone that's done CAD of any sort knows there's just a lot of repetition. And when you look at building design, especially like at big scales, so you look at schools, hospitals, big corporate office buildings in your downtown area, there's a ton of repetition. So for anybody that's ever put together blueprints or done any type of design, so like every single switch is laid out. Every single outlet is laid out. And in the old days, and by old days, I mean like 20 years ago. So in 2000, they were still doing this like with a pen by hand on Mylar and creating blueprints.
Look, this is for our new building. This is what I get from our.
Yeah, big roll, big set of sheets.
This is pre big roll right here. I got to turn into the big roll and then turn it into CAD later. Super fun.
So everything is detailed, right? Just like in manufacturing, you've got to detail every single component, every detail of that building, like how a soffit lays, how a like cornice is. Everything is detailed to like the nth degree in that building. So that was a guy using a pen. Then it was a CAD symbol that you still had to click 1,000 times. Now it's a 3-dimensional model with a database behind it that you click, but it's got all this information, which means schedules are super easy. But somebody still has to make that click, 1,000 times, however many rooms or devices are in that building. So for me, like, that's super stressful. You're doing so much repetition. You're on big deadlines. I mean, these buildings that we're working on, like a new school, like an elementary school, 100,000 square foot elementary school for like 300 kids is going to be 25 million, right? And then you scale that to a brand new high school that's 300,000 square feet, which is 75 million. So you're doing super, super big builds, super, super big projects that just are massive in scale. And I'm going to keep talking here.
Yep. I'm here.
All right, cool. So super, super big in scale. You're doing all this repetition. You're talking big dollars, big money. And through all of this, you're doing the same thing from project to project. So my thought was like, there has to be a better way. And the kind of the breaking point for me was I had a vacation scheduled in like end of February or end of January, beginning of February. It was going to Hawaii. I lived in Indiana at the time, Indianapolis. So at that time of year, it's super cold, snowy, and you just like don't want to be there, right? I want to be at a beach in Maui. I got shingles 2 days before I was supposed to leave, which is stress-triggered illness. And through construction, so like I'm 30 now, but at the time I was 27, and I had gray hair. I was stressed beyond belief, and got shingles. So here I am on a beach. You'd like a beer? Can't do that. You're on antivirals. So this was like my kind of breaking point moment where it was like, this is over. It was just gotten back with my girlfriend, now wife, and like, all right, I'm done. She lived in California. I lived in Indiana. I was like, all right, I'm done. I'm going to quit in 6 months. I'll move to California and start my company, which had already been kind of in the background trying to do this automation, but it was like this, like no more. And if you've met anybody in construction, they're graying way too young. They've got like high blood pressure, they're on something at like 35, have heart problems at 50. Like, it's really bad across the entire industry. And I mean, I experienced it on like a minor scale, right? Shingles is painful, but it's, not the end of the world. And so and me just seeing all these old guys through the industry, they're gray, they're stressed, they're on high blood meds, all this stuff. So that was really the big genesis for me, is like, there had to be a better way, kind of working on it. And then ultimately to create something that automates all, like, for me, it's electrical is what I'm starting with. And I'll go through all the other disciplines of mechanical and plumbing and architecture, everything like that. And so that was really the genesis for me, is to provide a better life, a better way to do things for engineers that doesn't create all this stress, all this, uncomfortable stuff through a project.
That's amazing. I want to unpack two big takeaways that I see from that story. And there are two components that I feel make a really great entrepreneur, right? So one thing is that you kind of had a burning platform. You had an actual human need for it. And I deal with a lot of engineers as well. And I've kind of shifted my I guess my target audience focus. Not that I don't deal with engineers, but I deal with people, I call them innovative misfits. So it's people who don't quite fit into what they're doing, because to be able to become an entrepreneur, it's a transformational life change. It's not just like getting another job. And a lot of engineers, they're unhappy, but they're not unhappy enough at their job to want to change. So they're kind of like, well, if this product idea, this service, this freelancing, whatever they're trying to do doesn't work out, they're like, I'll just go back to Google and get that $300,000 job again. I'm like, dude, you're going to fail. Like, you're going to fail because there isn't a plan B. That's like your plan A, B, C, and D is like, I'm just going to go get another high paying job. You don't really want to do this other thing. You have to, like, it's not a burn the boats thing. It's like that. This is the only boat, right? This is the pathway to a better life. And so I definitely identify with that portion of it. And I think that's a big delineator between people that can be successful and people that want to be successful, is that. But the other thing is like, you actually did the thing. And this is, I put it in the post, and it sounds insane when I'm typing it, but I've spoken with like thousands of startups, and it's super rare that somebody builds a business, especially people that are younger, like founders that are 45 and over. They usually found it based on their experience. And it's a little bit beyond scratch your own itch. It's more like, this sucks. I've been doing this for 20 years and I have enough money to solve this problem, right? But like, there's this weird conception in the marketplace that to build a business, you have to do something that no one's ever done before, and you have to have no idea what you're doing. And we hear these really cool stories, and I'm like, you hear those stories, they're news because they're newsworthy. They're outliers, right? The average founder of a successful business is 45 years old and has 20 years of experience in their industry. I'm like, that's so boring though. You know, but for the other people that want to start something, I'm like, go get a job and try it, right? And or go work for a company that does it. Even if you worked in the mailroom at a company that did it and you went and talked to the engineers every day, and you'd be like, okay, well, I actually have a software background and I think I can solve this problem. But you like deeply understand it, and then you can deeply solve it. But it seems so stupid when I say it, but it's so rare. It's literally like 1% of people found totally new ventures based on actual industry knowledge and experience, especially in manufacturing, especially in engineering. They just create like random things.
Yeah, it's so true. So I now live in California, which I regretfully moved to. Like being in Oregon, you know, it's the saying in Oregon is like, keep Oregon green, stay in California. There's like a lot of politics and things that I just despise about California. But here I am. I'm in the mountains, so I'm like 2.5 hours outside of.
You're outside the bubble.
Yeah, like my whole county has 50,000 people. Half the county is Yosemite National Park. You know, we're completely different from that mindset. But I go to a good chunk of events in San Francisco for construction tech. And it's exactly what you say. It's all these tech people that they might know software. They have no idea how construction works, right? They don't know what an RFI means. They don't know what a change order equals.
Yeah.
Like they've never had to be on the phone with a guy that's yelling at you, you know, over $1,500, you know, for a change order, right? Like, but that's that guy's livelihood, and they don't understand the other side of it. And for all this, like, this is the biggest thing with, especially I see it in construction all the time, is exactly what you're talking about. People are trying to come in because construction, you look at the graphs, right? Like no innovation over the last however long, right? We haven't improved all that much. So, okay, you look at the graph and you're like, oh, there's got to be a place to disrupt this. And you're like, but do you understand the contracts that are written and how they're written in this industry that keep everything operating the way that it does, and the supply chains through all of this, and the vendors and the established relationships that have been there for 20 years to like deliver a product on time? Yeah.
Also, human beings have been building physical things like buildings for tens of thousands of years, whereas like we've only been building software for decades. So you're like comparing the productivity boosts of software to like an actual building. You're like, yes, like you're talking about the equivalent of inventing the arch, which we did a while ago, right? Yeah, I understand. You know, so we want to upheave everything, but productivity has increased pretty dramatically, but in a multi-trillion-dollar slow-moving industry. So like you can't, you know, you're comparing to, but we see this in manufacturing as well. They're like, there's no innovation. Like we're going to do this thing. I'm like, you should actually work in a manufacturing company, because like what you're saying, like either A, already exists, B, is way more complex than what you're saying, or C, is like won't actually solve the problem that you think that it's going to solve. So go work for a place. And I know construction is probably similar to manufacturing. Their job requirements to getting hired is, are you alive and will you show up every day or almost every day to work? It's like, you are perfect for this job. You can go as far as you want. You just have to show up. We need people. But the talk of like about the software people, I want to like flip that. So your background's not in software. You're electrical engineer. You have construction experience. So you're clicking in CAD. Like, what made you want to jump off the deep end and hop into, shipping bits instead of shipping atoms? Right? What's the deal, man?
Yeah, so the Genesis was back in 2013, like end of 2013, beginning of 14. So the Oculus Rift DK2 just came out at that point. So yeah, back when Oculus was still Oculus, and Lucky was still running it. I think he still is, but back, so DK2 was like the first like commercially viable product from Oculus. So virtual reality, all that stuff. And so I worked in an architecture firm at that point. Me, the IT guy, and an architect got together and we formed our own little skunkworks. Like it was literally in the basement. We carved out a space, like found a desk, ran a LAN cable over to the computer. Like it was hidden behind all this other crap in the basement of this firm. And we went to work on being able to pull, because we had all these models, right? We had all these 3-dimensional models.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, it's basically gaming, right? Like you need to create a world. Well, we do that as an architecture firm. So let's pull all these models into a Oculus and then walk through it. So in that whole process of figuring out how the hell you do this, and this was before, like now it's click to VR. This was like, it took 4 hours to get, or a day to get a model into VR. That was
there's no Unity at this point. It's not like all.
No, so it was Unity.
Okay.
So this was Unity like V2 or something. Like it's 7 years ago.
Yeah.
So Unity been out for a while, but so Unity to do it. So the process was you had the model, you exported it to 3ds Max, and then took it from there. Did a bunch of stuff, like flipped all the polygons and then put it into the Rift, or exported it to that, or into Unity to then export to VR to then play it. And you had to have a machine that was powerful enough to do this, because you're still connected by an HDMI cord and power cord and all this other stuff to the headset. Yep. And like at that point, even with a pretty powerful machine, I still got migraines after being in it for a while. Like 10 minutes, you got a migraine because it just wasn't a high enough frame rate. But being in the like that side of kind of the technology, or the like, hey, there's like, there's an open API behind Revit that nobody uses, that like people were building some macros for to like automate a couple things, but it had this big open API that nobody used in Revit, and like kind of stumbled upon it. And Autodesk has always been a partnering type of company. Mm-hmm. Whether you like them or not is a different story, but they're a partnering company, and they open up all their APIs so you could do a lot of things for it. And now they're partnered with Unity to do this as like a click to VR.
Yeah.
Using Unity's engine. But with a lot of this, like, so that was the kind of start to where, okay, you can take this model, you can write some software behind it. And if it's just a database, which is really what it is, then like you should be able to manipulate that database to create everything that you want. And I worked for 3 firms between that time. So that firm, the next firm, and a firm after that, which I got increasing experience. I became a department head, then went over to do more client-facing work. And through all 3 of those firms, nobody wanted to touch software. So I was like, well, if nobody wants to touch it, I'll just do it. And I kind of was working on it in the background. I was like, I hired some people to do it. And now like this year from COVID, I learned to code because I was like, I don't have the cash. So I've got to, learn. I took one course in like Python and C back in college. So in like 2008, it was the hardest I'd ever worked for a C+.
That's a great story. So basically you had to, because no one else wanted to mess with it, and you couldn't hire somebody, so you just went and learned.
Yeah.
And you've released like 3 products now.
So yeah, this year this is a difference in the people that will complain about 2020 and the people that want to do something with 2020. I got sick in end of February after going to San Francisco. So I was on the couch for 2 weeks doing 75 hard. So all I could do is 2 walks a day, and started the year with 1 product, 3 features. So it only did lights, outlets, and switches. That was the only thing it like populated through a model. I'm sitting right now in beginning of December 2020 with 8 products that do 17 features, and across 4 versions of Revit and network licensing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's what's crazy to me, and I talk to a lot of like our mutual friends, and I talk to other people online. I think I live in like a bubble where there's a lot of people that are just not only are they doing okay, but they're thriving, or they've adapted and they've tried like 6 different things and they've hit one that works, and they're like, okay, now we're doing this right now, you know, like, and I don't know, because I talk to other people and they're like, well, I guess I can't do this anymore. Like we were talking about the podcasting, you're putting out a ton of content, and it's like, yeah, you can't go to that San Francisco meetup anymore. So like, what are you going to do? And it's like, you're going to hop on LinkedIn, you're going to put out a podcast. You got 2 podcasts, so it's like, you just have to do something different. And yeah, I guess I live in a weird bubble where I keep talking to people and they're like, yeah, this sucks and this happened, but X, Y, and Z, and I'm in this space now, and this was terrible, but this was really good. And I talk to other people and they're like, yeah, I haven't worked in 6 months. And I'm like, what have you been doing? Like, I don't know, I got fat. I'm like, okay, all right, but like,
Yeah.
I don't know, what are you? I feel like I'm living in 2 separate worlds sometimes, but what are your feelings on? Well, I do want to pick your brain about LinkedIn, one thing, but just a feeling about like getting your message out there and talking to people in the universe that we're living in right now. It's like,
Yeah. So I'll give this a couple answers. First is, you've got a choice, right? Like, you can either do nothing, even if sales have not been stellar for me this year. I'll straight up admit that. But on the other side of it, like, what can I do? Well, I can build product, right? And try to find something that's low enough ticket, that's easy enough to integrate, that it doesn't solve everything like my main first product does, but okay, do this little thing, right? So what can you do is the first question, and just do that. Because what else are you going to do, right? Like, you're going to sit on your couch and watch Netflix. So that's the first thing. The second thing, for LinkedIn, for getting your message out, for Instagram, for whatever, like, I've built over the last 4 years, I'm at just over 10,000 people on LinkedIn. That takes years to build, especially for LinkedIn. Like, it's a very hard platform to add, but you can do it intentionally. So those 10,000 people that I'm connected to on LinkedIn are my target audience. Like 98% of them are my target audience. They're engineers in construction. Like, that's it. So that's the beauty of LinkedIn, that you can target and build an audience that will see your stuff in the industry you're in, no matter how small it is, right? Like, finding electrical engineers in construction, if you go look at the census data, there's like 4,000 of them. It's not a big market. Like, it's not a big market. So like, you have to be intentional. Like, I can't build target audiences on Facebook, right? Like, that target audience doesn't exist because, one, most engineers aren't on Facebook, and you need 1,000 people. So if 3,000 of them decide to not put that on Facebook, well, you can't find them.
It's intentionality too, right? Like, if you're trying to show them your product that can attach to Revit, it's like a little bit easier of an ask to be on LinkedIn and say, hey, this person has Revit in their CV, they have it in their LinkedIn profile. Like, they're probably interested, right?
Yeah, your targeting becomes, if you're in B2B, so like, if that's your audience, right? If you're in B2B sales, you can't not be on LinkedIn, period.
Yeah.
Because that's where all businesses are. And for most B2B markets, it is not big. You've got, if you're a regional guy, like that, you only sell in Colorado or Wyoming or Indianapolis or DC, your market is not that big. You've got 500 people to go after, more than likely, at most.
Sure.
So you're not going to reach them on Instagram. I mean, you don't not post there, but like your intention should be to hit those people up. Like you can find them by their job title, where they live, what they do, who they work for. Like, the companies you're looking for if you're in B2B, like, the industry, the market, all that stuff. So, and to be able to then connect with them, then send them a direct message or video message or voice message or whatever on LinkedIn, you can't do that on any other platform. So to not be using it is just insane to me.
Yeah. I mean, the platform's really exploded in the past like year or so. And now, people like Gary Vee are, he's blowing it up. He's like, hey, everybody's got to get on LinkedIn. I'm like, okay, Gary, yeah. Like, but let's keep it civil, guys. Like, but yeah, I mean, I definitely see more content on there, and it's been good to me over the last forever that's been around. But I feel like it was a super smart move for Microsoft to get involved and then just kind of slow roll it out there. And yeah, I don't know. I don't have 10,000 people.
You don't need it. You need 500.
Yeah.
You need 500 connections in your local market. For anybody that's doing that, like I'm selling globally, right? Like Revit is global. So my market can be global or across the US or, in the local town, right? But again, it's like one engineer in the local town or 3. So to get some type of big traction, and like my intention is not to stop at like electrical. My intent is to help to reduce tedious tasks through all of construction. So when you talk about like, I'm in software today, the intent is I'm going to do robotics and everything else down the line for design to operations, like we're not stopping. We're just starting here. Yeah.
We've been doing a good amount of work in the like green tech space. So a lot of solar, either with Department of Energy, NREL, and that stuff. Even the stuff that is commercial, it's really B2B to C, because there's all these installers and engine like MEPS companies kind of like in a layer. So if you're talking about, I want to sell my product to Walmart, you really can't sell solar panels to Walmart. You sell it to some MEPS firm that rolls out infrastructure for Walmart, and it might be a company that's actually owned by Walmart, but it's not really. And to be able to figure that out on your own is like impossible. But if you go on LinkedIn in about 15 minutes, you can actually figure out that whole structure of those companies. It's really interesting. It's like, oh, there's this tech company that's actually does this and this and this, and then you can, when I'm working with a startup, maybe they're just a pure tech person, and you're like, you don't even know what that term is, right? What that would possibly be. See, Jade's on here. She's watching from LinkedIn. That's great. LinkedIn Live. I know I was just bugging you about that. LinkedIn Live is awesome. But yeah, it's like B2B sales, like it mystifies people, and LinkedIn kind of like takes the mystery out of it a little bit, because I feel like once you know the word for something, then you have power over it, right? It's like the magic spell. You know the word for it, and then you can use LinkedIn Navigator and you can search and be like, oh, there's 10,000 people that are like this person. But I don't know. My industry is a little weird, but I'm always watching what people like yourself are doing and being like, how can I get better at using LinkedIn?
So here's the really simple tactical stuff. So I've sent thousands of voice messages, personal voice messages to people. I've sent upwards of 10,000 direct text messages to people, personalized. Like I've done all of that. And in the last, let's call it 6 months, probably about, June was the big drop. Like it took a tank for response rates, everything else through LinkedIn. Like voice text used to be like fairly good in response. Like I had 20-25% response rates, and it just went to like 5-10, same message, same everything. And it dropped like a rock. So for me, and not to say that you can't do it, it should just become so noisy on LinkedIn with every marketer, every Joe out there trying to find something, or like, hey, do you have a job? You know, can I work for you? And it's like,
Yeah. I get a
dude,
crazy amount of recruiters. It's like, and I know I have the thing clicked that's like, I'm not interested in a job. Don't contact me for a job. But I don't know. Game respects game. I'm like, no, I'm not, no, thank you.
yeah, like no hate, but it's just so when you know you're going into a noisy market, right, of somebody's DMs on LinkedIn, which it worked great like a year, 2 years ago, phenomenal.
Okay.
But and now you've got to either change it, right? You got to do video, you got to do something that's no one else does, right? To be unique in that market. Like no one's going to do video. Don't write a paragraph to anybody, right? Like it just shows that it's a canned response, that you never read that person's profile. And that's what I hate more than anything. Like, do you not see that I'm a software company? Like, no, I'm not hiring like that. You know, you're whatever you're looking to do, right? Design buildings. Like I'm not, you gotta have some software, man. Like that's what we do. So you got to know what market you're going into, and with LinkedIn, like inbox, you've got to be unique, right? And if you don't have that unique thing that you're going in with, don't do it, right? Like it's, and with like my target audience, maybe some of yours, if you're dealing with engineers, like they don't say anything on their profile, right? There's no description. You don't know what they do other than maybe a job title. Like that's it. So you have nothing personal to like lead with. So again, don't just stop. You know, they're post good content relevant to who you're looking for, to your audience, stand for something, right? And do that and be consistent. Like I've been posting Monday through Friday for the last 2 years straight.
Wow.
I mean, you be consistent. People know what you stand for, and you can do pretty well, but you got to stand for something. And if you post often enough on LinkedIn, people will know it. You know, if you've got 500 followers in B2B, you need one. Like that's all you need. You need one.
That's true. That's right.
You're not looking for 10. You're not selling a $10 widget, most likely in B2B. You're selling a $10,000 or $100,000, a $1 million or, $50 million deal. You need one. You don't need 10,000.
Yeah, that I mean that's true as well. And I mean that goes for people that are just starting something up. It's like you've got nothing going on and you need something going on, like spend the time, use Drift or a video platform to send an actual real video to each person. And they're like, that doesn't scale. I'm like, you're at zero right now. Like 0 times a million, still zero, bro. Come on. Like, just, do that, get a couple things, and then like, if that's what you need, and then ask them, hey, can I use you as like a white paper or referral, and then you can scale off that. But for right now, like, yeah, you're nobody. You got to have some kind of unique advantage, right? I'd be like, I've got no business, so it's just all I'm going to devote all my time to you, Dylan, because it's just it's like even that's a competitive advantage, right?
Totally. And like one of my clients, I built a solution specifically for them. I did it in 2 weeks. And again, all because previous to that, I decided to learn to program. So I was like, okay, this doesn't fit you exactly, but like, all right, I'll build it for you. Right. And they came, right? Like,
there you go.
So all because I spent, 2 hours with the guy and then built it, spent however long that took, and then presented again and again. And then, they bought, right? Like it's, but that's how you scale. Now I have another product that's up. It's, like, again, for most people, and this is the whole hype thing, that everyone's worried about scale. And this is the thing that pisses me off with like Silicon Valley is like, dude, Zuck started at Harvard. His pool was like 10,000 people, right? Like it ain't that big, and that's a social network. Like he started with a fraternity, right? 10 people, 100 people, right? For any of this, you got to start somewhere. And like scale. You can't scale from the start because you don't have the systems in place and you're not good enough to know what you need for scale. So one works.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's right. Yeah, people are like, this doesn't seem scalable. I'm like, well, you don't have any systems in place because you don't have any business, so you can't scale. So yeah, I have a little like, that's my catchphrase is 0 times a million is 0, right? And everybody's shooting because they want $1 million, and I'm like, well, you have nothing going on right now, so I can give you $1 million worth of knowledge or resources or connections, but you don't know how to file your taxes or do bookkeeping or like, sell anything, or you don't have any skills, like you don't have any process or anything. So just start at a low risk situation, learning how to speak to one customer, fulfill one customer, and then like you can, before you scale, you can repeat, right? So I can be like, this really worked, this guy liked me, he took a whole 1 hour meeting, how can I find 2 or 3 more people like this dude right here? And it's like, wow, that worked 50% of the time, so I know it takes about this much time to find these people. And like then we can have this scale conversation. But the earlier, it's like you've got 2 points, 2 data points, and you're like, one here and here, and you don't know if it's going to scale like this or going to scale like this. So like I need more data, so like let's repeat things and get a few more dots there, and then figure out like what scaling means. But yeah, like hype is pervasive across. I also call it like entrepreneur math, right? People are like, like I got this one sale and it took 2 hours. So like there's 4 hours, like that's 4 a day every day. And they're like, and I'll be a millionaire next month. And I'm like, or that guy's going to call you tomorrow and cancel the contract, because real life, everything that's worth doing is difficult. And if it wasn't difficult, we wouldn't want it. Because that's like the human brain.
Yeah. The real question is, are you willing to go to 0?
Yeah.
Are you willing to invest your life in the next decade in it? All your money, all your time, all your thought, all your effort. Are you willing to do that for, let's say minimum 5 years, probably 10, and all your money? Like, show me your commitment.
That's a good way to choose. That's a good way to, like, if you had a bunch of ideas or a bunch of different markets that you were going to go into, and you say like, which one should I choose? I think that would be a really great measuring stick. It's like, which one would you do for 10 years that like barely pays off, and then in the 10th year it's going to pay off? Like, would you be willing to get paid half as much in your current job for 5 years and to just try this thing? Like, what's your level of commitment to that thing? Because
most people aren't committed.
yeah, I think for sure. I mean, coaching people, it's like, I say like, okay, well, it takes about in my market, a simple physical product takes 6 months to get to market, right? Like a simple thing, the most simple thing that you can think of to get the business and get the marketing and like test it out and prototype it and get it into production, 6 months. Like a reasonable product takes 12 to 18 months. So I'm like, how much do you love your idea? Do you love it like $100,000 or $200,000 worth? Would you put in $200,000 and not get paid back a single dollar for 18 months? And they're like, oh, hell no. I'm like, well, then let's find something we can do in 6 months. How much do you love it now?
Yeah. I mean, so like the shirt I'm wearing, UTLT, Ultra Trails Lake Tahoe. I did 50 miles around Lake Tahoe, or like in the mountains of Lake Tahoe. So, what's your commitment level, man? You willing to stay the course, right? I stopped at 50 and didn't go to 100. How committed are you?
Oh, man. The people that do those ultra marathons, I'm just like, I'll just stick to 75 hard for right now. I'll be a crazy person to the rest of the people. You be a crazy person to me, because that's like, I mean, that's just the next level. Maybe one day, but no Jesse Itzler toenail stories for me.
I've never had that. Never lost a toenail.
Okay, because I keep talking to people and they're like, "Oh, it's no big thing." Jesse makes it sound like it's really bad. You barely feel it; just comes right off. I'm like, that sounds worse. Like, it's not how your body's supposed to work, right?
Yeah.
but I totally get it. It's like his story, like going all in, just being like, I'm not even that prepared. I'm just going to do it, and just seeing it through. And I think he had that mentality because he's an entrepreneur and done so many things like that as well. And but there's certain like flavor of that or level of that in all the successful people that I talk to is you have to lose like a toenail eventually.
Something like, yeah, you got to be in love with the idea. You have to have that commitment, that drive for it. Like, again, for what I'm doing, like my big goal, if you will, is I'm going to save 1 billion hours annually in construction, like, period. So that's across robotics, design, like you name it. If it has to do with construction, we're going to save you time. We're going to make your life
Nice.
better. And like, period. But that's like, I have a passion for that because construction builds the world and nobody seems to care about those people. I'll care. I'll be that guy to help you save time and live better, period.
That's amazing. That's amazing. As an aside, every time you say robotics, I'm thinking like, oh, we got to have a manufacturing robotics conversation because it's automation is just becoming the hot button thing, and that's leading people more into using products like Revit, or there's actually a Dassault has a product for factory design as well, and just designing the whole factory in CAD right down to the machines and like the human factors involved and wiring everything up, because you can't rewire these factories. Once you put in a piece of equipment that's multiple millions of dollars, you can't move it ever. It's all trammed in. It's perfect, right? And I don't know, that's like my universe. So it kind of gets me excited, but
yeah, I mean, you can totally do it. I've put in a lot of presses and stuff for a lot of plants. You can do it. It's just not cheap. Like for a lot of, like, I've done a lot of work in like GM plants and stuff like that. These big, you're digging out a lot of stuff to make it work.
Yeah, dig out the floor, pour new foundations, put in that press. It's awesome.
And I mean, these, like, it's bigger than a house, these huge presses.
Yep.
And so like the type of manufacturing that is coming, that is starting, is they call it prefab, but it's really a design build, getting back to, the true, or like 100 years ago, right? The guy that they called them master builders. So the guy was the architect, the builder, like they did everything. And now we have like this big supply chain between design and like the guy putting it in. So, and with design, there's a lot of pieces in there. So like, let's take framing is probably one of the easiest conversations. So like specifically for like light gauge metal framing. So you can't necessarily do this with wood just because of the properties of wood, where, warps and squares sometimes tough to get on wood framing. But with light gauge metal, like studs, you can prefab all of that and put it all through a CNC machine to get out like all the right cuts for an entire like framing set for a wall, that then you space out, this one goes here, here, and here, outlet goes here, all this stuff goes here, and you can start prefabbing all that. So when you go to the job site, maybe the wall is already pre-constructed. They set the full wall, an 8-foot section of a wall that'll fit on a truck or flatbed, and then set it, and then you're done. You move to the next. So all that's done off-site. So there's going to be more and more off-site construction, to where, and especially like in COVID times where you can't have as many people on a job site, you can space people out in a factory. You can do all these other things, to where in COVID and social distancing and all that stuff. But in non-COVID times, the way that this works is you now reduce time on a job site, which saves you money, which, safety is improved. Everything's like increased in value and time, and you have less waste. It's all controlled in a factory. And then you just have pure like bolt installation. You got 6 screws or bolts or whatever to a full wall set, and you're done. Move on.
Awesome. That's like the dream, though. It's the
It's
dream.
coming.
Yeah, it's coming. It's
Here in
and it,
pieces.
yeah, all the pieces are there, right? And I don't know. Well, before we wrap this up, I want to ask one. I do have one canned question, one weird question that I want to ask you. So, um, what is your superpower? If you look at your journey, what's that one differentiating piece that you're like, this is what helped my success move forward?
I'm gonna give two.
Okay.
One is being able to combine ideas, right? So the genesis of my software is taking software to what has predominantly been a human thing, right? A guy
Mm-hmm.
clicking and marrying the two, right? Seeing these automation ideas in a lot of other areas, a lot of simplicity, and I guess like in just the formation of the idea of what this amounts to, it was just combining all these pieces together to create something unique. It wasn't necessarily hard, like everything was there, the whole stack was there, you just had to put it together. So
That's
that
awesome.
would be number one. And I want to say people is number two, but I think it's really just optimism, right? Everybody wants to be around somebody that is doing something, that is happy, enjoying their life, that wants to like help you be better in
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form. You know, no, everyone doesn't want to be around Eeyore, right? You just don't want to be around Eeyore. It's those guys, right? Like you don't want to be around them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's probably my other superpower is I'm optimistic. I'm probably overly optimistic, as my wife would say, but it's that optimism bleeds through to create relationships. And whether they pan out now or not, I don't care. Like just like it's friend, right? And I can say that and be happy about it. Like I don't need anything else outside of that. And if
Yeah.
you go into relationships or building connections or network or whatever, if you go into it like I'm just looking for dudes I can shoot the shit with and be totally fine with that, right?
Yeah.
Then it's you win, right? So you're optimistic, you're happy, creates a really great environment for people to be around.
Dude, I love that. Yeah, totally. I feel like it's a huge differentiator too. Not because like we live in a weird time or like unprecedented times or whatever. It's just like I mean I come from like a hard trade background, and a lot of people just let the world of how difficult things are beat them down. And just by being like, hey guys, look at this giant piece of equipment that we get to play with. This thing is awesome. And then you get people maybe involved that also think that it's awesome, and you can kind of get over that and maybe build a better culture, or at least build like a better life, or a life that you want to have around yourself. Which I feel like that's like the end game. That's what people want. Like versus I can get a bunch of money and I can like fly out to XYZ, but what am I going to do? Just return to a job where everybody hates me and I hate everybody else? Like, yeah, I love that as a superpower though. Yeah, definitely. Um, that's going to help me keep my head screwed on straight.
Yeah. I mean, the last engineering job I had, I was making, good six figures and I hated it. Like it was miserable. You
Mhm.
know, I was just in an environment that was not conducive to like my well-being. Um, I had some really cool projects. I was doing a lot of healthcare work, which great experience. I loved my client, but the office environment was just not something I loved.
Yeah.
So, if you hate it that much, like I don't know, I won't say infinite, but like a lot, multiple 10 times happier today, making a lot less money than I was, knowing that my purpose, my mission, the thing that I can do, the ability to speak and share my mind without any repercussions, to feel good in who I am, what's that worth?
That's awesome. I might have to peg you as an innovative misfit, as one of my target audience avatars, because and that totally makes sense. It's like skilled people. You're in a position and you're like everything checks out. It's all by the book. Like you have the degree, you have the job, you've got the pay, and it's like, but there's just a certain flavor of person, and I'm definitely one of these people where you're like, this, I thought this might be different, I guess, or it should be different, or maybe my life should be different, and I just don't quite fit in there. And that's why I say misfits. It's like, and it's really cool to see somebody kind of hop out of that and be like, you know, use entrepreneurship as the vehicle to find something that makes you happy, you know, and it's more fulfilling. And yeah, you can post on LinkedIn every day with no repercussions or whatever, but
yeah, like I'm not going to get fired from my job, right?
yeah.
And through like most of this, it's like I'm going back to help the industry I came from, right?
Yeah.
It's not that I hate construction. I just didn't like how it was being done. And the only way to do something about it is to go beside it, to come back and help those people. That's the only way to make that happen.
That's awesome, man. Dylan, thank you so much for being on End Hype Live. I really get a kick out of these lives because I never really know what we're going to talk about, and it's kind of all off the cuff. But you know, appreciate you as always, man. Do you have one last piece of wisdom for the audience before we hop off?
I do. Yeah. And Callie, thank you for having me. It's always good to talk with you in our groups and manufacturing calls and all that stuff. So I appreciate what you're doing here, and especially trying to end hype.
End Hype.
It is not all it's cracked up to be. But my biggest thing to convey to everybody is, what are your thoughts? You know, what are you thinking about? Are you skewing positive and like, this happened for me and in a good way? Or is the world happening to you and you just keep getting kicked in the balls, right? Like, pick one and audit your thoughts. And that is a pretty easy black and white. You know, are you going positive? Or are you going negative? You know, one of the two, pretty easy, but audit your thoughts. And once you have that audit, it's pretty easy to see where you are. You know, are you Eeyore or are you Tigger? It's
Wow. I love that. All right, everyone. This has been End Hype Live. My name's Callie Keene. I'm out.